everybody, today I'm going to be sharing some analogies for tics. So the first one is like a firework. Fireworks are loud and get people's attention. Tics can be very loud. Vocal tics can include things like yelling or even screaming, making loud animal noises, and much more. So it's loud like a firework, and tics also get people's attention. A lot of people with tics find that they're stared at quite a lot, but that can make some people self-conscious. But it's important to know that your tics are just something that is part of your beautiful self, like a firework is beautiful. So it's nothing to be ashamed of and you can't control it. And if people stare, they're probably just curious. It's like Dick and Dom in the early 2000s program where they would yell bogeys. It was a game they would play where they would go around and in quiet places like libraries and see how loud they could yell bogeys, but they would start it quietly and like see who would get noticed. They would build it up, start really quiet and build it up. That's similar to tics, although the tics don't really do a build up. They will just yell something really loudly in a quiet place so that everybody notices. Number 3, it's like Ruprecht in the Dirty Rotten Scoundrels comedy. Ruprecht was a character who, well, it's quite strange because he looks like he resembles Satan, which was a bit weird, but that is not the relation to tics. The relation to tics is that there was a scene where he had a fork with a cork on it, and the reason he had a cork on his fork is because he would injure himself with the fork if he didn't have the cork on it, and he also had an eye patch and he almost stabbed himself in the eye with a fork. It reminds me of how tics can injure you, unfortunately. Tics can injure people and they can be quite impulsive, and sometimes we need our own protective gear, like I used to wear padded gloves because of my tics. That just reminded me of tics a little bit. Having tics is a little bit like being in a constant game of truth or dare, but mostly dare, because your brain is almost as if it dares you to do the weirdest thing possible. Like, my tics have done such strange things. They've made me try to eat a sock before and try to eat toilet roll. It's like it dares me to do the weirdest thing possible. And I say it's mostly dare and mostly not truth, because tics usually aren't truth. They usually aren't what we're thinking, and they usually don't reflect our opinion, though there are some times when a tic may tic what we're actually thinking or may tic something true. But usually I find my tics are just random things. It will sort of yell stuff just to mortify me, like a dare. And this moves me on to my next analogy. My tics are like a 3-year-old who just wants to mortify me. My tics seem to think it's funny to make me yell the most inappropriate thing or the most random thing in any given moment. So it's like a 3-year-old who just finds it funny and is so mature like that. Having tics is a little bit like being a villager in Minecraft. If you've ever played Minecraft, I don't know if it's still like this today, but it used to be that the villagers would just go, over and over again. And it's like a tic, because our tics can make random noises like that. I think I've had tics sounding a bit like that before. My mum said I sound a bit like a Minecraft villager before. So that's a bit like a tic, repetitive noises in that sense. It's a little bit like a David Bowie song, which sounds really strange, but David Bowie's songs are incredibly random. Some of them, like Life on Mars, the lyrics at first glance don't appear to make much sense. They're kind of just scrambled together, and it reminds me of how tics can just yell such random things that seem to have no correlation whatsoever. It just comes out of the blue, and it's so strange. Though if you're creative enough, you may be able to make a link between them, though usually there isn't an actual link. Having tics is a little bit like constantly playing Simon Says, but instead of Simon telling you to do something, it's your brain making you do it. It's telling you to do it. It's sometimes urging you to do it. We sometimes get an urge before we tic, called the premonitory urge. Having coprolalia is a little bit like being a game of Cards Against Humanity. It throws some inappropriate ideas together and jumbles it out again, just like Cards Against Humanity. Tics can come up with some very strange ideas, particularly the coprolalia, because the coprolalia can just be so inappropriate and so obscene that when it comes up with just random inappropriate phrases, it sounds just like something out of the game Cards Against Humanity. It's a little bit like having superpowers, but not very useful ones, but in the sense that if you had superpowers, everyone would be really intrigued by it, and sometimes people are intrigued by tics and want to see you tic, just like they would want to see your superpowers if you had superpowers. The problem is that having tics isn't as cool as being invisible or being able to fly. Having tics is a little bit like being a puppet on a string. This is a very classic analogy because a puppet on a string, of course, the puppet's controlled by whoever's controlling the string. the tics are controlling what we do. Like when I hit my chest, it's like if you imagine me being a puppet and the string just pulling my arm to do that. That's why some people use that as an analogy. It's a little bit like playing a game of whack-a-mole, but instead of whacking the mole when you get the impulse, you will whack the wall or a door or yourself. Self-injury tics sadly happen, and destructive tics happen as well, and they can break lots of things, which is very annoying. It's a little bit like being a fish dragged out of water. Fish that are dragged out of water, please do not drag a fish out of water, I'm vegan, but fish that are dragged out of water move about a lot and sort of, I guess, contort and shake, and I don't know what this is, this sort of movement, okay? And that's a little bit like tics in a sense, like motor tics can sometimes happen so fast that they kind of look like that. Like, I've had tic attacks where I'm just kind of wriggling about on the floor and I look just like a fish dragged out of water. This is an extremely common analogy that people use, but it's like a sneeze. Before I sneeze, you do often get a sensation, like usually it's in your nose. But for a tic, we also sometimes get a sensation, not everyone does, but some people get a sensation before they tic. And like with a sneeze, you can hold it in sometimes. Like if you sniff, sometimes you'll hold it in a bit. You can sometimes hold in tics a little bit, but the problem is that when you hold in a tic, they can come out worse later on and cause a lot of tension. The sensation can grow, the urge can grow, and it can be really, really uncomfortable and also trigger rage attacks. Having tics is almost as repetitive as the game Simon. The game Simon is a game where, wow, it plays a sort of pattern to you and you have to repeat that pattern and then it keeps growing. Sort of how like tics can be very, very repetitive. Some tics can be something we do over and over and over again and it gets quite tedious.